Hi and welcome to today's episode, which is all about making a deliciously vegan and slightly grown up coffee and walnut cake. I've had a kind of rough couple of weeks and I'm really in the mood to eat my feelings. So I thought today's the day I'm going to make a nice big cake because that will help a little bit. I've settled on doing a coffee and walnut cake. I love both coffee and walnuts, and in a cake, it's amazing. I found a recipe on schoolnightvegan.com. I'll link to the original down in the description for you, so, give them some love as well. I'm going to change and add a couple of ingredients just to deepen the flavours and kind of elevate it a tiny bit. It's already a very nice recipe, but I'm going to add a couple of bits just to boost it and make it probably a bit more grown-up tasting than a typical coffee walnut cake. The recipe method was also something I'd never encountered before, so I thought it might be a really interesting way of trying it. If you'd like to have lots more plant-based recipe ideas served freshly to you, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Look for the bell icon, tap that, and then you'll get an alert as soon as new one's published. And if you'd like to give a bit of extra help and support to the channel, I'll pop my Patreon down in the description. You get behind the scenes content, we've got a video and film recommendation chat going on, and it's also an opportunity just to show a bit of appreciation, like these people. I'm preheating my oven to 160. Mine is a fan oven, so if yours isn't, you're probably going to want to go 180. I'm using grams in this recipe, but I'll do the conversions and pop the note up in the corner there, and I'll put the full ingredient list with both metric and US down in the description box for you. We're going to start the recipe in the food processor. Because I'm using walnut pieces, we're going to use the food processor to break down the walnut pieces. You can skip this step and do it in a bowl if you can find ground walnuts. I'm adding in 70 grams of walnut pieces. This is 180 grams of golden castor sugar. I think it's super fine sugar in the States. Feel free to use white. I just like golden because it's got an extra bit of caramel flavour to it. This is the first slight change that I'm doing from the original. So add the sugar in. The second change I'm going to do is switch out light brown soft sugar for dark brown soft sugar. This has got more molasses in it, so the flavour's a little bit deeper. We're going to blitz these down until it resembles sand. You can see I've still got some chunks of walnuts. I'm just going to do it for another 30 seconds or so. The recipe asks for espresso powder. Now I went and treated myself to a bit of a fancy instant coffee for this recipe just to make sure the flavour was nice and mellow, not too aggressive. The only issue is that it's granules. So I'm just going to tip some into a pestle and mortar and crush it down a little bit. And whatever I don't use, I can just put back into the canister. That's fine, so nothing's being wasted. I'm doing quite a bit because I need some later on as well. That's down to a nice fine powder now. Might be a couple little bits, but I think that should be fine. For the wet ingredients, I'm just going to do everything into one jug. You want 200 mils of neutral oil. I'm doing sunflower, but you could use avocado, I guess coconut oil, if you don't mind the coconut flavour. Try and get a refined one though, perhaps. I'm going to be using yoghurt, and really you want to be finding one that's got no sugars in it. I'm using plain. That's what the recipe states. I did toy with the idea of using vanilla, but the vanilla yoghurt is sweet, so I would have had to start messing around with the sweetness from that. Plus vanilla might detract from the walnut and coffee flavour a bit. Take that up to 400 with the yoghurt. This is a soy yoghurt that I'm using. I just prefer the flavour of soy yoghurt, but I guess you could use a coconut based or an oat based, whatever you like. I'm going to do 4 tablespoons of soy milk. Again, unsweetened. I'm going to do 4 teaspoons of the coffee powder. Once I've blended everything together, I've got a feeling I'm going to add more coffee because I want it quite intense. I'm just going to give it a bit of a whisk. I mean, it's not going to combine terribly well because you're mixing fat into water, but just to make it a bit easier. Okay. So I'll pour this wet mixture into the walnuts and sugar. Turn it on and give it a whiz till it's well combined. I think that's done, but what I will do is just stick a spoon in. I'm just kind of checking the bottom. Yeah, I think that's perfect. The coffee flavour isn't intense enough for me, so I'm doing another 2. If you don't want it that strong, just use the 4, that's fine. I'm also going to add in some cocoa powder. Coffee and cocoa boost each other up a bit. So if you're making a chocolate cake, put a little bit of coffee in it. And if you're making a coffee cake, we can do a bit of cocoa. So I'll do, I think, half a teaspoon of the cocoa powder. Totally optional. I'm also going to add about a 1/4 teaspoon of pink salt. Use any salt you like, and this is totally optional, but salt just enhances flavour as well. Lid back on and just mix that through. And I'm setting up a separate bowl. So I'm going to sieve 220 grams of plain flour, like all-purpose flour. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. The cornstarch is in there to help bind the batter together and stop it from splitting. I've made cakes in the past using almost the exact same ingredients, like the Christmas cake one I did. Didn't use cornstarch, so I don't know if it's essential. If you've got it, chuck it in. If not, try it without. Now I'll add 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder and 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Sieve those together. I've just had a quick look online as to why use both baking soda and baking powder. Apparently it's partly for tanginess, but also baking powder is double action. So you get the immediate reaction when you add it to something acidic, but you also get a heat reaction. So it gives you kind of lift twice. And obviously baking soda gives you an immediate big lifty reaction. Go in with a whisk and just mix those together. I'm going to add the wet mixture in. This cake could probably be made with decaf coffee. So, you know, if you're taking it to a party or something where you don't know if people can tolerate caffeine, might be an idea to use decaf. Combine those together. When you're baking a cake, you don't want to be too overzealous with the stirring because that's going to develop the gluten that's in the flour and that'll make the cake a bit tougher. So really you just want to do minimal amount of stirring as you can. So I'm doing almost a folding kind of technique. Pay attention to the bottom of the bowl because you can end up with dry stuff stuck on the bottom and you don't want that on the top of the cake. Okay, so I think we're about there. Nice and easy. I've got a lined cake tin here. I think this is 9. I'll measure it and stick a note on screen. I've lined mine with foil and then brushed it with oil to stop the cake from sticking. I never have any luck lining cake tins with baking paper. If you've got that as a skill, crack on and use baking paper. Pop the batter in. Now the original recipe does it in 2, like a sandwich cake that way, bakes the batter in 2 tins. I don't have 2 tins of the same size, so I'm just going to do it as 1 and then split it in half once it's cold. I'll lay my tea towel down, just give the cake a bit of a tap. I want to try and level that off a little bit. And I've got the cake on the middle shelf. Hello. The original recipe says to bake for 25 minutes, but that's for 2 cakes, like 2 thinner cakes. So I reckon it's probably 35 minutes, something like that. After 25 minutes, I'm going to come have a look. I'll jiggle it, see how much it moves. If it looks firm, I'll stick a skewer in. And once the skewer comes out completely clean, that's the point you know it's done. Once it's completely baked through, I'm going to put it on a wire cooling rack. I'll leave it on the cooling rack in the tin for 15 minutes, then take it out. And then the recipe says once it's completely cool to then chill it in the fridge. Not sure why you'd need to chill it unless it's for the buttercream, so that doesn't melt. Then we'll come back and I'll start making the buttercream and we'll decorate the cake and shove it in our faces. Yes. Cake's been out of the oven cooling for about 2 hours. It's still warm, which is very frustrating because I want to eat some cake. Thought I'll assemble the buttercream and then by that point hopefully the cake will have cooled down a bit more and then I can put it in the fridge perhaps half an hour just to chill it off a bit. I did flip it over in the foil because the top was cooler than the bottom, so I thought perhaps, let's see if that does anything. Actually that is much cooler already, which is great. I've just washed the pestle and mortar and I realised I need it. Oh, that's a problem because now it's wet and I need to do powdery things. The oven's still a touch warm, so I'll put it in there because the house is quite cold, so hence me having a fleece on. I made some candied walnuts once the cake came out. I filmed it in close-up for you. Once I took the cake out of the oven, I dropped the oven down to 140. This is 85 grams of walnut halves, which is about a cup. These are for decoration, so you want kind of nice looking halves. The original recipe wants 125 grams. I didn't have enough halves, so I thought I'll do what I've got and make do. Put those in a strainer and just covered them with cold water, shook off the excess and put them in a little bowl, and then sprinkled over 2-ish tablespoons of granulated sugar, just your bog standard kind of coarser grain sugar. Tossed it through in that quite well, and then put it on a baking tray, and I turned every piece right side up, put them in the oven for 20 minutes, took them out, flipped them over, and then put them back in for another 20, and then took them out and let them cool down. And that gives us candied walnuts. So there'll be nice little decorations on top. And then we'll make the buttercream. Despite me having the butter out of the fridge all night, it was still really hard. So I did the microwave softening trick. Cut it into slices, put it on a plate, put a cup of water in the microwave, heated it up until it was really steamy in there, took the cup out and put the plate in. It's the heat from the steam that softens the butter. Don't microwave butter because it will just melt and you'll never be able to cream it the way we need. This is still a little bit hard, so I think I'm going to do another minute. I'm doing slightly more buttercream than the original recipe just because I've got a 200 gram block of butter, so why do 150 grams as the recipe states? And then I found a little bit of found like another 10 gram piece of butter in the fridge, so I'm doing altogether 210 grams of butter. So it's a 2-to-1 ratio, so 1 part butter, vegan butter, to 2 parts icing sugar. So just kind of work it out that way. I may well have some left over, but that's fine. It can go in the freezer and sit in there along with the brandy buttercream. The top of the cake, which was the bottom, has gone cold. The top is now slightly warm, so I'm just going to turn it again. And then I think 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'll put it in the fridge. I've just decided I'm going to measure my icing sugar into a separate bowl. So really what I should have done is put the butter into this big bowl, put that in the microwave. It's fine. Because I'm thinking, even if that isn't completely softened, I'll just chuck it in the bowl and try and use the cake mixer to break it down and soften it up a bit. So I'm just going to measure that into a separate bowl, and I'm going to sieve it to get it nice and light, make sure there's no lumps in there. Just going to push that through, make a bit of room. There's my bowl of icing sugar. Yeah, it's a lot of sugar. I'll go in with my fork first just to squish it down a bit. I just don't want to put the beaters in and then it fling one of the pieces out the bowl, because let's be honest, that's very much something that would happen to me. That's the mixer I'm using, just like a little standard cake mixer like that. If you've got a big stand mixer, go for it. You're lucky. So I'm going to put beaters in and just go low speed to start with. I might actually put a bowl on top of a tea towel just to see if it stops it skidding around. I'm going to pause every now and then just to scrape everything back into the centre of the bowl. You want to beat this for a good 3 to 5 minutes, something like that. And you'll notice the butter goes lighter because there's air in it. So that's a nice indication that it's nicely whipped. But you'll feel it like before you start whipping. It's very stiff and difficult to move around the bowl, whereas now much easier. So now I need to add the sugar in spoonfuls at a time. You don't want to put the whole lot in because it just becomes messy. And I'd start it on a low speed because otherwise you're going to flick the powder everywhere. I'm going to bring you in for the final bit of adding the sugar. So I've been wiping the sides down after every couple spoonfuls of sugar just to make sure everything is getting mixed equally. Put the last bit of sugar in. Okay, so that's all whipped together. In this dish here, I've got 1 tablespoon of the coffee powder and 1 tablespoon of boiling water. Mixed it together really well and then just left it to go cold. So I'm going to add that in. Beat that in, start on a very slow speed. I'm going to add a squeeze of lemon juice in because it's very sweet and I just want to cut that back a little bit. I might have to add a little bit more sugar to compensate, but we'll cross that bridge if we hit it. In fact, I might squeeze it in because then I can catch the pips as they appear. Start the motor slowly again and then build the speed up. Give that a try. Yeah, that's good. So it's probably 1/4 teaspoon, maybe 1/2 teaspoon. I'm just debating whether to add more coffee because obviously I've put an extra 150 grams of stuff in here. I've got another instant coffee that's powder. I'm just going to take that down further in the pestle and mortar so it's a very fine powder. I'll do like a 1/4 teaspoon to start with. Do another, it's probably 1/2 teaspoon. And I think the coffee is going to get hydration from the frosting. Like it'll melt a little bit better. Okay, very quickly now because I have butter everywhere. The buttercream is almost done. So for the top, it is done. Part in the middle, the additions I'm going to do are completely optional, so feel free to just sandwich it with that. But I'm going to add in some toasted walnuts and also some powdered cardamom. Cardamom goes really well with coffee. My mum sometimes puts cardamom in her coffee press. tastes very nice. It's an Indian spice. It's quite aromatic, fragrant, very nice. Skip it if you don't want it in there. I've got a book that's got what flavours match with other flavours, and I'll see what else matches with coffee and put that in there. You could do things like cinnamon, maybe some chocolate, you know, and take it that direction. But if you want some spices, maybe, I'll stick those in there for you. I'm going to take a quarter of the mixture, and that'll be for the inside, and then the rest will be for the top of the cake. So I've taken about that amount. I only want a thin layer. I'll crush down the cardamom, add that, and then I'll add the walnuts, just because otherwise it might be a bit harder to mix the cardamom in if there's a big piece of walnut in there. I'll do 5 of the pods. So the pod is like that, and then it's got lots of seeds inside. I'm going to crack them open. And that leaves the little seeds, like that. I'm just blowing on it to get that kind of papery filament off. So that leaves little seeds there, so I'll go in, crush those down. I'm going to add it in through a sieve. So I've got probably, I don't know, a quarter teaspoon of stuff, but it's just whether I can get it fine enough, because I don't really want big bits of it in there. Work that in with the spatula. Try not to take out too much of the air. I think I'll do the same amount again. So I'll just have to crush some more. Okay, add a bit more. Probably done about a quarter teaspoon or so of powdered cardamom seeds. Yeah. For me, that's enough. It just gives a nice little bit of interest. It's not cardamom flavour, it's just singing alongside the coffee that's in there. And then that is 30 grams of walnuts that I toasted off in the air fryer. I think I did 170 for 8 minutes, something like that. Shook them halfway through. You just want a little bit of toasty colour on there, and that brings out the flavour a little bit more. So when they're toasted, they break up quite easily. So I'm just going to break them apart by hand, but feel free to use a knife if you want. I think I'll put that amount in, so that's probably 2 tablespoons, and then I'll mix it together and see if I want any more. So I'll fold those in. Yeah, let's put them all in, why not? I'm picking out any bits of walnut skin that are immediately apparent, just for mouthfeel more than anything. Again, just gently combine. I think that's going to be good. So let me give it a try. I thought about adding a touch of salt, but those walnuts, they add not quite saltiness, but savouriness. That's fabulous. Ooh, okay. Time to cut the cake open. All right, so I'm just going to put it on the upside down cake tin. So I'm going to do my usual, and I'll lift it with 2 knives. I'm going to cut it like there with a serrated blade. Kind of turn the cake periodically. Putting this one in because it's a bit wider, so it'll give more support. Put that one in on that side. No, change of plan. I'm going to put it on the plate first. I don't know if putting it in the fridge was a good idea because it feels a bit soggy suddenly, whereas it didn't at all before. So put that on the plate, and then I'm going to lift the top onto there. So I've got a spatula with a cranked handle, gives your fingers a bit of clearance. I've got a feeling if I try and just drag it, it's going to pick the crumbs up. Yeah, see? So I'm going to try and gently spread this on. So now I'm going to try and go back through and just flatten it down a little bit. Cake decorating is not my forte. I am more than comfortable admitting that. So if you've got any tips for how to stop, you know, you filling picking up the middle of the cake, feel free to drop those in the comments for me. Okay, and then we'll drop the other half on top of it. I mean, we won't drop, but you know what I mean. Yeah, I didn't think this through terribly well. This, I don't know how well it's going to be detectable on camera. The edge of the plate is hitting the middle of the cake, so trying to get the frosting down to the bottom is going to be quite difficult. So I'm just going to try and swap this over. So I think focus on the top first. So I'm just going to cover the top with the frosting. And it's almost like those cracks never existed. like spackling. So I'm trying to decide what kind of, maybe if I do sort of irregular kind of, yeah, I think that looks quite nice, and it'll have little walnuts on top. So that is the cake, fully frosted. I could certainly spend hours flattening it all off and all that nonsense, but that ain't me. What I will do is try and neaten off the plate a touch. So I've got a bit of paper towel and I've wet the corner. And I'm just gonna go in and take it off. Yeah, that'll do. I could spend ages perfecting it, but I'm not gonna, because it's 8 o'clock and I'm yet to eat dinner. Maybe cake for dinner though. I'm gonna go in with my little candied walnuts. I'm gonna try and kind of space these out equally. Debating whether to go down the sides, but I think I might just do them on top. So I'll do like a concentric ring within the spaces. Perhaps one more inside there. The cake is all decorated, looking amazing, and ready to be stuffed in my mouth and used as an antidepressant. There is a little slice of the cake. I'm so excited to get this stuffed in my face. Let's do it. I'm not even going to try and be elegant about it. I'm just going to go for it. Ridiculous in the best possible way. It is sweet, but it's balanced. It's not like, it doesn't hurt my teeth. You know, where there's some like kids' birthday cakes, they're nice, but then it gets a bit, that's too much. This, because you've got the deep flavour from the coffee, the toasted walnuts add a bit of savouriness, that drop of lemon juice in the buttercream, it all kind of counteracts the sweetness of it. That's stunning. It could possibly even tolerate more coffee, you know, if you like particularly like strong coffee. Yeah, maybe do another full teaspoon of powder in the buttercream and maybe a couple more in the cake batter. Oh, this is going to be gone in no time. The cake texture's lovely, very light. If you don't like the M word, block your ears for a second. Lovely and moist. I worried when I was splitting the cake, I thought, the bottom's very soggy, but it's okay. It's not at all. Texture does hold up well on its own. It's not just crumbly and falling apart. That is a delightful, delightful cake. The candied walnuts on top give it a really nice crunch. And then because we put the toasted ones in the middle, it's just got a nice bit of texture throughout because the cake's nice and soft and tender. But then as you start crunching it, you get to those pieces of walnut that just adds a bit of something. And then as you chew into it, it releases the walnut oils that just add, it's like a savoury nuttiness rather than pecans, which will do more of a sweet nuttiness. It's quite a grown-up cake, but I think as long as your kids like the flavour of coffee, no reason they won't like it as well. The cardamom, I pick it up as almost an aftertaste. So you've got the coffee and the walnut at first, they're the kind of dominant flavours. And as you swallow and start breathing again, you get the hints of cardamom that's really pleasant. It's very light and aromatic, so it kind of lifts things up a touch. That's the amount of frosting I've got left over. So I'm just going to put that in a little tub and it'll go in the freezer. I have considered pulling out the brandy buttercream, the remainder that I put in the freezer when I did that Christmas cake, because coffee and brandy, lovely. Brandy and walnut, lovely. But ultimately I decided not to. That would work so well in there. Obviously it would make it not so suitable for kids, but as a boozy adult cake for dinner parties, that kind of thing. Yeah. I made the cream cheese frosting to go with the chocolate stout cake. I wonder if you could maybe use that instead of the buttercream, because it would be a little bit lighter, less sweet, because you've got the tanginess from the cream cheese. Cream cheese has got that kind of cool tanginess. I think that would balance really nicely with the walnuts and also with the coffee. So that might be worth experimenting with. I'll link to both of those down in the description for you. It's been a couple of years since I made it, so I can't remember exactly how I made the frosting, but I would maybe grind down your coffee so it's a very fine powder, mix it into the cream cheese and leave it, mix it again, and then let the wetness from the cream cheese melt the coffee, and then start adding it to the butter and sugar. Yeah, worth a go, and if I ever try it, I'll update the pinned comment. If you'd like lots more tasty evidence that going vegan doesn't mean a life resigned to eating sticks and mud, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Look for the little bell icon and tap it. You'll get an alert as soon as a new one's published. And then while you're waiting for the next one, have a look at this.